I began with working out the shapes for this robot character using the polycylinder and the polycube a lot, and for the head, which was one of the first things that I did, I used the bevel tool to give it that rounded shape. I did up the segments to make it smoother, and I did a similar thing for the very top bit of detailing on the head. I made the vertices into a rounded shape for the eyes, and I extruded and made a holding edge to keep the shape, and then smoothed it. I hid a duplicate layer for the head for this to make the live layer when I'd done the extrusion to make sure that the head shape wasn't deformed. I tried to use the mirror to get the other foot, but I decided to duplicate and -1 on the translation to get that instead, because the mirror didn't make another foot as expected. I made one finger and then cloned them for the rest, and then I set up a parenting system where I printed the fingers with the hands all the way up to the top of the arm, and this is how I posed it as well for the turnaround. I used the Lambert shader to get the chrome texture preset for the metal look, but it did show up a lot of errors in the UVs, so I went into the UV editing to unwrap it properly. I have included one image of where the head didn't unwrap as expected and it just didn't look right. I decided to cut my own seams and re-unfold it myself instead of using the automatic, and that made it work. I made a flat plane into an infinity curve to get the background and used the 3-point lighting, which worked well for this. For this scene, I began again with the basic shapes, and I did the boards quite early on with the loop cut tool and moving certain edges in to get the shaping of the edge. To make the cutouts on the feathers as well, I did it slightly differently. I used the cut tool to make the shape and then bridge to fill in the gap once I'd merged the internal vertices. For the skull, I used the radial brush tool to pull it out the shapes out of a circular shape, and then to make the eye cutouts I used a circle which I then lined up the vertices for and deleted the rest of it and reversed the faces, and I then textured it all and parented it together. For more complex shapes like the string, I used a cylinder which I then extruded and to make the more kind of organic shape, which I then used the bridge tool at the end to cut it off. For the necklace, I used a NURBS curve with a sweep mesh to get the string of it, and I then made instances of one of the beads to then make the rest of them and arrange them in that order around the... for some parts of it, I had to manually UV unwrap for the more complex shapes, so like the bottles, using cutting and to make the seams, which I then selected and unfolded and used the layout to give myself a texture that I could then put into Photoshop to colour in and texture myself. I then imported it to a Lambert shader, which gave it this effect. For other things like the metal surfaces or the rock surfaces, I used the standard shader, and for the metal I used a preset, and I think clay for the rocks. I attached the camera to a motion path on a NURBS curve for this one to get the turnaround view.